Good morning and welcome to the Halifax Regional Council budget meeting for February 17th, 2021. This morning we will be talking about the Halifax Regional Police budget and the Halifax with the RCMP budget and the Halifax Public Libraries budget. Before that, I would like to call the meeting to order and go through the role of each of the councillors just so that we can do an AV check. So I'd like to start with District 1 and Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Morning, Mr. Chair. Ready for libraries and policing and RCMP today. And just a quick little shout out to the thank you to the Middle Musquodoboit Agricultural Society for inviting me to their AGM last night. It was awesome, virtual and safe.
Yes, good stuff. Thank you very much. Councillor Hensby, District 2.
Good morning all, and just want to say greetings and also just remind people that tonight at 7 o'clock there's the Musquodoboit Harbour Chamber of Commerce and Civic Affairs Town Hall meeting virtually being held, and a part of that presentation be our own Department of Transportation and Public Works about bylaw A600 possible amendments of signage along Highway number 7 through Musquodoboit Harbour. There'll be a presentation tonight, and I encourage people to follow.
That's an important meeting to be at. Councillor Kent, District 3. Councillor Kent, are you with us? Okay. Councillor Purdy, District 4.
Nana Purdy.
Nana Purdy.
Good
That's
morning,
right.
everyone. Happy to be here representing District 4 on this lovely day.
Good stuff. Thank you. Councillor Austin, District 5.
President and accounted for, Mr. Chair. Also accountable.
Yes, good stuff. Councillor Mancini, District 6.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. Speaking to you from beautiful Dartmouth, the best part of HRM.
Arguably. Councillor Mason, District 7, the other best part of HRM.
Good morning, everyone. I'm not going to dive into that. Councillor Mason from beautiful District 7, one of the 16 beautiful districts in HRM. I just wanted to note to the committee that I'm going to have to step away at 10 o'clock. We're doing public consultation with the Severity Council and then the Grand Council on the HRM Culture and Heritage Priorities Plan, and I'm going to support staff there. I'll be back after around 11 o'clock.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Smith, District 8.
Morning, Chair and colleagues. Councillor Smith here, District 8, Halifax, Peninsula North. Looking forward to getting going.
Good stuff. Thank you. Councillor Cleary, District 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to be here representing Halifax West Armdale. Just a little tip. If you need to tell people yours is the best district, maybe not. Well, looking forward to get going.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. Councillor Morris, District 10.
Good morning, everyone from Clayton Park. Happy to be joining you this morning and looking forward to the discussion about policing and libraries.
Thank you for bringing us back on track. Councillor Cuddle, District 11.
Morning, everyone, and welcome to our viewers from the public.
Good morning. And Councillor Stoddard, District 12.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, colleagues. Coming to you from District 12, Timberley, Lakeside, Beachville, Clayton Park West, and Wedgwood. Looking forward to learning a lot this morning.
Good stuff. Thank you. Councillor Lovelace, District 13.
Good morning, colleagues. I'm repping the Hubbard's Library behind me. We've been closed for a little while we have accessible washroom upgrades, but the library is available for curbside pickup and will be open very shortly. Thank
Good
you.
Stuff. Thank you. Councillor Blackburn sends her regrets, so Deputy Mayor Outfit, District 16.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Looking forward to today.
Good stuff. Thank you. Mayor Savage.
Good morning, Chair and colleagues. Mayor Mike Savage, proud to represent the most beautiful part of HRM.
There we go. Thank you very much. So we have everybody present and accounted for. We are waiting on one person to continue to join the meeting. We are also waiting on Councillor Kent to join. Approval of the minutes, there are none. Call for declarations of conflict of interest. Not hearing any. We have public participation. This is a section of the meeting where the public is invited to make comments, make a presentation. As a reminder to those watching from home, in order to have signed up as a speaker, the deadline was 4:30 p.m. on the business day prior to the hearing. We have these meetings every week, so there is still time if you would like to make a presentation to the Budget Committee. We have 2 speakers signed up for today's meeting, and any member of the public who has registered with the clerk's office on this matter will be given 5 minutes in order to address the topic. And at this point, I'm going to hand it over to the clerk.
Good morning. For the public speakers who are on the line, please ensure that your webcast or TV broadcast is muted and that you're listening using your phone. When you hear your name announced, please press *6. After that, you'll hear an announcement that you are no longer muted. Please wait for the chair to tell you that it is your turn to speak. Once you have finished your comments and answering the questions or any clarification questions from council, please hang up your phone and watch the rest of the meeting using the webcast.
Thank you very much. The 2 speakers are Harry Critchley and Terry Ajati. Harry Critchley, please press *6 now and you will hear a system announcement. Are you online? Harry, are you there?
Hello.
Hi, is this Harry?
Yep.
Hi, Harry. This is Paul Russell. Please go ahead with your presentation to the Budget Committee.
Great. Thanks so much. And I'll say that I also circulated some written submissions, so I hope those were received. My name is Harry Critchley. I'm the co-chair of the East Coast Prison Justice Society. I'm here to speak to the proposed budget for the HRP for fiscal 21-22. I also appeared before the Budget Committee last year to advocate for the diversion of funds from the HRP budget for the purpose of establishing a sobering center in Halifax. So last year, a subcommittee of East Coast Prison Justice conducted a survey of all the declared candidates ahead of the HRM municipal elections, and we had a 71% response rate. So I'm going to be drawing on the results of that survey, because notably, with the exception of a few councillors, everyone here today, as well as the mayor, completed our survey. And I'm going to be drawing on the survey in service of making 3 general points. So the first is that our surveying suggests that there's strong support for greater accountability regarding the HRP budget. And in particular, 100% of our respondents with an N of 952 supported holding the HRP and the RCMP accountable for fully implementing the recommendations from the Wortley report. Several candidates also endorsed Lisa Blackburn's position that budget approval should be tied to the HRP demonstrating progress in implementing these recommendations. Currently, the Board of Police Commissioners tracking document does not list a single recommendation as having been completed within Section 4, that is, the recommendations that are the responsibility of the HRP and RCMP. When asked directly by Commissioner Blackburn at the board's meeting on the 28th, which of the recommendations have been completed, HRP Chief Dan Kinsella said, "I don't have the exact number of what was completed." Further, for more than 40% of the 17 recommendations, there is no indication in the document regarding what progress, if any, has been made. Clearly, more needs to be done. In particular, recommendation 416 states that a committee should be formed to monitor progress on the implementation of the recommendations. Notably, this is one of the few recommendations to include explicit timeline, with the committee being required to report to the Board of Police Commissioners no later than September 2020. Unfortunately, it goes without saying, but no such committee report was presented to the board at their meeting on September 21st of that year. So second, HRP should cease spending $250,000 annually in taxpayer money on polygraph testing and do away with its mounted unit. So polygraph testing, as we know, is notoriously unreliable. Their use is unadmissible in court. However, the Supreme Court in 2000 ruled that it is acceptable for the police in the context of an interrogation to exaggerate their reliability or even fabricate the results, and that doing so does not render any subsequent confession necessarily involuntarily. So the HRP have claimed that they primarily use polygraph testing as part of their employment screening process. However, as recently as 2008, there were serious concerns about this process, with candidates reporting being asked whether they'd ever thought of killing themselves or of having sex with animals. A review regarding all aspects of the test was supposedly conducted at that time, but no results were ever made public. More generally, however, the use of polygraph testing in the context of employment screening is largely indefensible, insofar as their use for such purposes is prohibited by law in Ontario. By the HRP's own description, the mounted unit is largely ceremonial, with its officers participating in a number of parades and community events. The HRP budgeted $260,000 for polygraph testing and $271,000 for the mounted unit in fiscal 2020-2021. When presented with these numbers in our survey, 72% of respondents either agreed or strongly agreed that these amounts budgeted for these line items could be better spent elsewhere. Collectively, these line items amounted to $531,000, which is more than 94% of all the money budgeted for the Housing First program in Halifax in fiscal 2019-2020. As many of you know, Housing First works to provide supportive housing to some of the most vulnerable people in our city. People who have experienced chronic homelessness, many of whom have also struggled with addiction, mental, and physical health concerns. In 2013, the Halifax Housing and Homeless Partnership set a goal to end homelessness in the HRM by 2019. However, according to AHANS, there are currently 477 people who are homeless in Halifax, of whom 375 are considered chronically homeless. By comparison, in October 2019, there were 230 people in Halifax who were homeless. Finally, my last point is that HRP continues to chronically underfund victim services at a time when such services are more needed than ever. So victim services is a line item in the HRP budget, and the funds provided to this unit have hovered around $271,000 for several years. Call for Justice 5.6 in the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls report maintained that victim services must be independent from prosecution and police. However, the unit currently has no operational independence insofar as the funds allocated to it are determined annually by the chief of the HRP. 100% of the respondents in our survey supported holding the HRP accountable for implementing the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls final report calls for justice. Additionally, 96% supported moving victim services and other units such as non-core policing units such as the Youth Advocate Program and School Crossing Guards out of the HRP and into the HRM Public Safety Office. Notably, when it came time to make cuts to the HRP budget as a result of COVID, $50,000 was cut from the victim services budget. This cut should be concerning to all members of Halifax in light of research which has suggested that this frequency and severity of intimate partner violence across the country has increased markedly since the onset of public health lockdown measures in March. And unfortunately, at the board's meeting on January 28th of this year, Chief Kinsella provided no indication in his presentation whether this cut to victim services will be remedied in fiscal 2021-2022. Thanks so much for listening to my comments. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at eastcoastprisonjustice@gmail.com.
Thank you very much, Harry. I'm going to reach out to the Budget Committee at this point. Do you have any questions of clarification for Mr. Critchley? And if you do, please indicate that in the chat. And at this point, I don't see anybody's looking to ask a question for clarification. So thank you very much, Harry. You raised some interesting points with the Wortley report, the polygraph, and the victim services. I really appreciate the insight.
Yeah, and I would ask that the board please consider the written submissions that were prepared by our organization. You know, they were quite extensive, and you know, our hope is that they will inform the deliberation.
Those submissions have been distributed by the clerk, and all of the members of the committee have received them. So thank you very much.
Much appreciated.
We're going to move along to Terry Ajadi. Terry, are you on the line? Please press *6 on your phone, and you should receive a system announcement that you'll be able to, that you will be with us.
Hello?
Hi, is this Terry?
Hello? Hi, yes, this is Terry.
Hi, Terry. So this is Paul Russell. You are free to proceed.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And good morning to the members of the Budget Committee. My name is Tari Ajadi. I'm a board member of the East Coast Prison Justice Society. I'm a member of the Nova Scotia Policing Policy Working Group, and I am a resident of District 8. Thanks very much for providing us the opportunity today to discuss the Halifax Regional Police budget for fiscal 2021 to 2022. So in my comments, I'd like to focus specifically on one aspect of the proposed budgetary increase of 3.1% for the regional police, with the understanding that your mandate is either to approve or to reject the proposed budget. So it's clear to me that the regional police's $85,000 request for a one-year term position to write a report on body-worn cameras is an unwise investment that ought to require broader scrutiny from Halifax Council, as well as the Board of Police Commissioners. This scrutiny should include the rejection of the budget as presented to be returned back to the Board of Police Commissioners. There are 3 reasons why this budgetary increase ought to be rejected. Firstly, any increase to the police budget during a period where we currently have 2 parallel processes run by Regional Council and by the Board of Police Commissioners looking at models to defund the police runs the risk of undermining public confidence in those processes. As community advocates looking to foster robust and meaningful public engagement around these issues, particularly within marginalized communities in this municipality, a unilateral increase flies in the face of Council's stated goals of meaningfully reflecting the public mood on this issue. Secondly, Halifax Regional Police cannot be trusted to provide accurate and extensive research around a budgetary request that we already know that they seek. The research process is already biased. We know what the conclusions will be. The Halifax Regional Police has a track record of misleading Council and misleading the Board of Police Commissioners about important topics. A report tabled just last week by the Auditor General indicates that the Regional Police's claims of improving IT security were inaccurate, and the progress reports they provided to the Board of Police Commissioners were untrue. Moreover, the supplementary report that Halifax Regional Police submitted to the Board on the 18th of January is filled with similar misstatements, half-truths, and obfuscations. The report failed, for example, to mention any of the null or negative reports and experiences of body-worn cameras in pilot projects in Edmonton, in Montreal, and with the Rcmp. The report also misrepresented the findings of pilot projects that they cited as positive. The findings of Durham Regional Police Services experience with body-worn cameras were, in fact, and I quote, "There are limited, objective, measurable data to suggest that there are multiple substantive benefits to implement a body-worn camera program." These reports are publicly available and easily accessible. I can only suspect that the choice not to include these findings in said supplementary report was a conscious one. An investment in a term position to produce biased outcomes like this does not strike me as acceptable or meaningful oversight. Finally, and most importantly, actual consultations with experts on body-worn cameras indicate that this investment is at best unlikely to produce discernible objective outcomes in either a positive or a negative way. At worst, the push for body cameras is being cultivated by Axon Enterprise, which is rapidly creating a monopoly on the technology, as well as the cloud storage solutions used to save footage across Canada, and are lobbying municipal officials across the country to do so. This technology has prompted police forces in the US to hire extra people to manage the footage and the tech after implementing it because it proved to be unmanageable, while others have gotten rid of them entirely because they proved to be unworkable. The Nova Scotia Policing Policy Working Group has consulted extensively with Dr. Christopher Schneider of Brandon University and Eric Lamming of University of Toronto, 2 leading experts nationwide on the rollout and oversight of this tech. Both have published extensively on this subject in academic and non-academic publications and have a wealth of peer-reviewed research that shows there is a far greater need for scrutiny of body-worn cameras. That scrutiny cannot and will not be found within the Halifax Regional Police, given their track record and given their clear and pressing preference to implement this technology. I strongly suggest that Halifax Regional Council rejects this budgetary request. Thank you for considering this request.
Thank you very much, Tari. Once again, I would open the floor to any of the committee members. If you are interested in asking a question of clarification, please indicate that in the chat. And not seeing anybody who has entered that they would like to ask a question for clarification, I would like to, again, thank you, Harry and Tari, for your submissions today. Please know that we have heard them. We will be paying attention to them. And I would like to move forward now with the presentation by the Halifax Regional Police. If I could have someone put the motion on the floor, please, before the presentation.
Chair, I'll put the motion on the floor because I'm starting off the presentation. Just give me a second. I lost my screen. All right. You can hear me, I'm assuming.
We can hear you. Yes.
All right, cool. That the Budget Committee direct the Chief Administrative Officer to prepare the Halifax Regional Police 21-22 budget and business plan as approved by the Board of Police Commissioners on January 28, 2021.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Nancy, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Cuddle. Please go ahead, Councillor Smith.
Yep, can I have the presentation up, please, and thank you. Great, thank you. So good morning, colleagues. As many of you know, Lindell Smith, councillor, but also the newly appointed chair of the Board of Police Commissioners. And today I'm doing a very brief introduction of today's budget before the chief goes into details. Next slide, please. So Nova Scotia Police Act outlines the mandate and authority and responsibilities for the Board of Police Commissioners. And for those who are not sure, just to give a quick reminder, the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners provide civilian governance and oversight for the Halifax Regional Police on behalf of Regional Council. The board also functions as the Police Advisory Board to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Halifax District as it performs contextual policing services within the Halifax Regional Municipality. The commission has 7 members in total. 3 are members of HRM Council, Deputy Mayor Lisa Blackburn, Councillor Becky Kent, and myself as chair. 3 are community volunteers whose appointments are approved by council. The volunteers apply and are proposed to council after an interview and selection. And we also have, and as a note to that, we have 2 members whose terms are coming up March 31st. So there will be some potentially new appointed members coming soon. Vice chair for the commission is Carol McDougall. We also have Natalie Borden, who is the past chair, Carlos Beals, who are community volunteers appointed by council. And then we have an appointment by the Department of Justice, in which they appoint 1 commissioner, and his name is Anthony Thomas. Sorry. One of those responsibilities for the commission is to review the annual budget for HRP to HRM Council, and this presentation also includes the budget for Rcmp service within HRM. Next slide, please. This is different from my one. So we'll just go, as many of this room already know, Halifax has a unique model for policing our municipality here in Halifax. We have an integrated model between HRP and Rcmp. This is, from my understanding, the only place that has that integrated model. Each service provides policing in specific areas. HRP is responsible for Halifax, Dartmouth, Bedford, while Rcmp has detachments in Lower Sackville, Cole Harbour, Musquodoboit, Cheat Harbour, North Preston, and North Central in Tantallon. And integration in co-locations are 2 features of this unique model. Criminal Investigation Division, courts, and records are example of co-located services. And this is the last slide, and I will pass it on to the chief to continue the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Chief Kinsella, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Chair. I'm just having problems with my video. There we go. Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to Chair Smith for the opening, and thank you to the committee for allowing us to present today. With me, I have Mr. Craig Horton, and together we will present on the budget and business plan for the upcoming year. If I could have the next slide, please. I'm going to talk just a little bit about crime severity and violent crime severity very quickly. This particular slide shows crime severity index for HRM in Canada from 2006 to 2019. The crime severity index is a measure of crime severity or seriousness on a per capita basis for the geographic region. It is compiled by Statistics Canada. The crime severity index measures changes in the level of severity of crime in Canada from year to year. In the index, all crimes are assigned a weight based on their seriousness. The level of seriousness is based on actual sentences handed down by the courts in provinces and territories. As you can see, the CSI in Halifax decreased between 2018 and 2019 after increasing 2 years prior. Analysis from Statistics Canada suggests that this is primarily due to reductions in sexual assaults, break-and-enters, and robberies, as well as a reduction in fraud and homicide. While there were increases in some crime categories as well, the overall CSI was lower this year than in any year since 2006 and continues a long-term downward trend in Halifax. Next slide. Just quickly on the Violent Crime Severity Index, or VCSI, which is like the CSI, but only includes violent crimes. This is important since we want to know specifically if violence is increasing or decreasing in HRM. As you can see, the VCSI decreased in Halifax from 2018 to 2019 and is the third lowest VCSI in Halifax since 2016. As with the CSI, this decrease is driven primarily by a reduction in sexual assault level 1, robbery, and homicide in this period. Next slide, please. Specifically to the Halifax Regional Police, I will go over a few slides here fairly quickly, just to give you an overview of where we are from last year. Next slide, please. The Halifax Regional Police is committed to supporting Regional Council priorities through the delivery of effective and efficient police service for residents and visitors to HRM. The Chief's Office provides overall leadership to HRP under the leadership of the Chief, with the Deputy Chiefs of Operation and Support reporting directly to the Chief. The Corporate Affairs and Professional Standards Division also report directly to the Chief of Police. This emphasizes strategic support of service delivery to citizens and supporting Halifax Regional Municipality's strategic outcomes through professional standards, strategic direction and planning, policy and development, audit and risk management, research and strategic communications. HRP's 4 operational divisions operate under the supervision of 2 deputy chiefs. Criminal Investigations and Patrol for the Deputy Chief of Operations, and Administration and Support for the Deputy Chief of Support. Next slide, please. HRM by the numbers. We had a total integrated emergency services calls of 173,383. Of those, 125,931 were 911 calls. HRP staff committed 13,070 hours to training, and hours contributed by HRP volunteers were 5,000. Next slide. Just quickly about some of the enforcement that's gone on over the last year. We had 879 break-and-enters, 1,596 speeding offenses, 342 people were charged with impaired driving in HRP territory, and a total of 4,244 criminal charges were laid. Next slide. Some of the highlights for the year. We initiated a multifaceted response following the HRP apology in November of 2019, including the creation and launch of the new Journey to Change training, focused enforcement of speeding and stunting across HRP areas. We had 100% solvency rate on 2020 homicides, and we continue to monitor for ongoing organizational alignment and redeployment for pandemic response and contingency planning. Next slide. Realignment within the Criminal Investigation Division, notably the creation of a Special Victims Unit, will bring enhanced focus to this area. Enhancement of the Professional Standards Division functions through a dedicated team of investigators and a new off-site location will allow residents of HRP and HRM to more easily report and engage with police on matters that concern them. We also increased our policy staffing and our audit functioning to ensure we're mitigating risks and meeting the needs of the municipality. And we also had additional staffing and oversight in the prisoner care facility as a key area that required on-site mitigations. Next slide. HRP is committed to becoming an increasingly more diverse and inclusive and culturally competent service. We want to reflect both that focus in our ranks as well as our interactions with the public. We implemented a comprehensive and inclusive response to the Halifax, Nova Scotia Street Checks report, including detailed short and long-term action plans involving enhanced training, community engagement, and officer conduct. I will note in this area that some of the recommendations within Wortley will be continuing over time. There's a maintenance component to a number of them, and we, as the HRP and policing and HRM, will need to be diligent over the long term to make sure that we're meeting the recommendations, not only in spirit, but in practicality. We established an African Nova Scotian Community Advisory Committee, including representation from members of the community to provide key input on training, recruitment, and HRP community engagement. Next slide. Our police sciences program will run the second in-house training in the spring of 2021. As I mentioned earlier, we have ongoing organizational realignment and implementation of 2020 organizational restructuring. We are constantly assessing internally capacity, delivery methods, best practices to ensure we're delivering the most effective and efficient policing we can in HRM. And HRP will implement a community survey to gather key information on public safety matters, and we'll gather insights critical to operating our service. And we're doing that in conjunction with the Board of Police Commissioners and our partners in policing, the Rcmp. Next slide. We have a stronger alignment with the municipality on its road safety strategy through enforcement and education. We've elevated our ability to provide service by enhancing our strategic focus on evidence-based and problem-oriented policing through our priority response review, which is ongoing. Informed by the findings of the priority response review, we will conduct an evaluation of our current patrol deployment model to identify and develop a plan for effective response and deployment of resources to ensure proper coverage in high call areas. Next slide. I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Craig Horton to go through some of the financial slides, and then I'll be back when he's completed.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Craig Horton. I'm the financial coordinator for Halifax Regional Police, and I'm going to walk you through the next couple of financial slides. The first one is basically provides an overview of the proposed 2021-22 operating budget in comparison with the actual financials for 2019-20 in the second column. The 2020-21 March budget approved in principle prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. The 2020-21 recast COVID-19 pandemic budget that was approved in June 2020, and the current end of year forecast for the current fiscal year. The slide also identifies the overall budget adjustments from the current fiscal year to next fiscal, which I will provide further details on in the next few slides. So you can see that the proposed net operating budget for 2021-22 is $88,580,000. I think the key points to take away from this slide is that the proposed 2021-22 operating budget is $2.3 million or 2.7% higher than the recast COVID-19 pandemic budget approved in June. It's also 1.3% or 1.2 million lower than the initial 2020-21 net operating budget approved in principle in March. What this tells us is the proposed budget continues to factor in significant budget reductions in areas such as overtime, court time, equipment, training, travel, extra duty, service fee revenues, etc., as a result of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. These budget reductions are currently planned to be restored over a 2-year period beginning in 22-23, half in that year and then half the following year in 2023-24. Also like to point out that the proposed 2021-22 operating budget is consistent with the target net operating budget figure identified by HRM's Finance and Asset Management Business Unit for Halifax Police, not including funds for service enhancements that'll be identified on a future slide, on a further slide. It's important to note that service enhancements would require HRM Regional Council to approve an increase in the Halifax Regional Police budget if the proposed budget moves forward as it's presented today. Next slide, please. This slide just breaks it out into service area, Chief's Office, and Operations Division. Self-explanatory. I think we'll go to the next slide, please. Staff counts from year to year. So no change overall in the staff counts. We have 530 sworn members and 208 civilian members making up full-time. And then the 66.4 seasonal, casual, and term are crossing guards, students, and one intern. Next slide, please. So this breaks down the adjustments to the budget from the current fiscal year of $86,275,100 to the proposed budget before service enhancements of $88,580,000. You can see the first number in compensation changes has to do with pressures in compensation, including HRPA step increases and SUPE 13 annual rate increase, non-union adjustments due to ISAs approved in 2020-21 fiscal year, and a reduction in the credit for attrition and turnover that was increased in the current fiscal year to address COVID-19 pandemic constraints. We've also included a pressure of $60,000, which is based on an estimate of 2.5% for overtime, and another $27,300 for 2.5% for court time. Due to the COVID pandemic, our extra duty program has been there's not as many jobs as there normally would be, so the expenses in that area have gone down as well by $292,500. Moving on to revenue adjustments, our fees for service relative to summary offense tickets. This isn't the fines. This is fees that we provide for services here at the police station. We're further reducing that for the next fiscal year by $20,000. The revenue that would come in through the extra duty jobs, whether it be an external job or an internal job, external being something like escorting a large piece of equipment into the city for a company. Internal jobs would be different HRM events like the Parade of Lights or whatnot. We're looking at a reduction in revenue of $310,000 in that area. We also had a secondment end during the 2020-21 year due to COVID, which resulted in a reduction in recovery money of $193,700. Next slide, please. One thing that we are putting in as a recovery of $500,000 for workers' compensation. So in late 2019, we moved our sworn members from a self-insured program to workers' compensation. In doing so, we included in the current fiscal year the budget that we would have to pay for premiums. However, we were unable to put in the $500,000 in the current fiscal year because the arrangement of how officers would be paid who are on WCB wasn't finalized. And it turns out we're continuing to pay officers who are on WCB, and WCB is reimbursing HRM for those costs. So that's why we're adding $500,000 under recoveries for the next fiscal year. And then finally, an increase of $63,200 in miscellaneous cost recovery increases. This is for other build back services, including the airport security contract, ports policing, as a result of inflation and compensation related increases. So slight increase there. For other budget adjustments, we have a few contractual related pressures. Our biological casework analysis agreement with the federal government, we're estimating a 1.5% increase. This is for all the DNA labbing testing that gets done by the federal lab. So we're estimating just a slight increase there of $5,300. Facility lease and operating costs. This is the 34,900 increase is the increase for Criminal Investigation Division building. It's based on an approved schedule of annual increases where every other year it goes up by approximately 30,000. We're also increasing our costs for commissionaires by 365,000. We did initially in the current fiscal year reduce our commissionaire complement as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, after a few months of experiencing that, we've determined that we need to bring some of them back. So we're bringing them back a bit earlier than the expected 18-month period starting in 2022-23 for COVID-related factors where we reduced the budget. So that's $365,000 increase there. And then as well, due to COVID, we've had to endure some costs for protective equipment and sanitizing equipment to the tune of about $80,000. So the total proposed changes before any service enhancements or asks of $2.3 million for proposed budget of $88,580,000. Next slide, please. And the final slide I have here is the options over budget slide, or the service enhancements that the chief is going to provide a little more detail on. But we do have a one court disposition clerk, which would be $85,800. You can see over 5 years, $450,000. An online training technician for $101,200. Over 5 years, about $530,000. Body worn video project coordinator, a 12-month term. That's only for 1 year, so that's 85 grand. And money for the Journey to Change training that was initiated this year and absorbed in the current fiscal budget. We're looking at $60,000 to continue providing that training on a regular basis for over 5 years. That'd be about $315,000. So total proposed increases of $332,000 for 2021-22 and approximately $1.38 million over 5 years. And I'm going to turn it back over to the chief to provide some more explanation on the new the service enhancements.
So the service enhancements that we're going to talk about are 3 civilian positions and 1 set of funding for a training program. It's important to note that the enhancements brought forward have no new sworn resources in their request. However, we need to be continually mindful of the organizational needs to address risks, provide a certain level of service, and continue to build important capacity for business continuity. The creation of a disposition clerk will address the backlog of sentencing dispositions and mitigate future risk. This function has historically been done as secondary duties by the court section staff and has resulted in a backlog building for a number of years. There has never been a person assigned permanently to do this job, and it is full-time work. The backlog over the years and the associated data management gaps demonstrate to us very clearly that this needs us to dedicate a full-time resource so that there can be a proper recording and continuity for the important function. And just for everyone's awareness, court dispositions essentially mean any convictions or court findings. And every police agency is responsible for uploading court dispositions, not into just their own systems, but also for the purposes of nationally mutually available data across the country. The multimedia training technician, we believe, is an important part of the way to move forward. As we know, consistent and proper training is fundamental to policing. Within our own context in HRM, and due to the recent events and reports like Wortley, there is a heightened focus on refreshing and broadening our training methods. This relates to training programs associated with our policies, those related to cultural awareness training, public education programs, and diversity programs. COVID has caused many constraints in the frequency of our programs, but also our overall ability to deliver training. However, it has also taught us some valuable lessons in the importance of virtual, computer-based, shareable training in not only overcoming these constraints, but also increasing our capacity to offer modules more frequently and more cost effectively. This is a significant opportunity to deliver training in a flexible manner when members are available and not inconveniencing members in overall operations when they are not all available at the same time or have to be brought in on their time off. We currently have very limited capacity for this. The new position will create and produce training modules and content. It will enhance training opportunities to improve employee wellness and morale and improve confidence in policing by acting on the recommendations for enhanced training contained in Section 4 of the Wortley Report, and will also help us demonstrate HRP's commitment to address anti-Black racism. The body-worn video project coordinator was brought forward at the request of the Board of Police Commissioners, and building on their direction from the January 18th meeting and the request for detailed policy development work and in-depth community engagement in this area, this resource will play a focused role in preparing HRP for potential adoption and deployment of a body-worn video program. The position will also assist with the following: policy research and development, community outreach to gather broad public input, and engage and liaise with other jurisdictions, subject matter experts, and stakeholders. And this dedicated temporary resource will help HRP develop its plan further to present a detailed and robust information package for future board and council considerations. As part of our commitment to change and a follow-up to the November 2019 apology to the African Nova Scotian community, a new training program was launched this year in collaboration with leaders from the African Nova Scotian community called Journey to Change. This training is imperative to building trust with the African Nova Scotian community. And although the schedule has been impacted by the pandemic, we continue to roll out the training on a fairly regular basis, with our second course being held next week and our third course being held in conjunction with our cadet training that will start in the spring. Through opportunities like this, not only are our officers able to engage in a dialogue with members of the community, but also amongst each other on how we move forward as a team and a profession. This dialogue and conversation is very important to our ability to grow. Participants of this course gain valuable knowledge and skills to help build positive relationships with marginalized communities. Topics of discussion include anti-Black racism, intergenerational trauma, and the impact of police interactions on members of the community. Through practical and interactive exercises, self-evaluation, and a panel discussion, this course is meant to create change through genuine engagement with the African Nova Scotians. This training was created with direct input of the community and a dialogue between officers and community members. This dialogue is integral. We believe this model, based on understanding the community's lived experience, is an important step and is highly responsive to what we are hearing from the community leaders and the recommendations of the Wortley Report. And that is my presentation, Chair, subject to any questions.
Thank you very much. I'd like to move ahead with the RCMP presentation as well, if Chief Superintendent Gray is prepared. And then we can...
Sorry, Mr. Chair, may I, point of order, may I request that we have the questions after the Chief HRP, so that we're not confusing the dialogue and discussion? I think it may be much easier. I would ask that we do that now, if that's okay. I just think it causes confusion if we go to RCMP and then your colleagues are asked about HRP questions and RCMP questions, go back and forth.
Yep, and you may be right. Let's go ahead with questions for the HRP and then the RCMP presentation after that, and then if there are any joint questions later on, then we can address them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Go ahead, Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Mancini, and thank you, Chief Kinsella, for the presentation, and also too for a number of the initiatives that you have undertaken, particularly the ones coming out of the Wortley Report. But I'm also interested in many of the other recommendations in the Wortley Report that are not yet discussed or implemented. So unrelated to that, let me ask this one first, because this is in your overs. Related to the body-worn camera project coordinator, at this point, has a policy been developed yet on body-worn cameras, when officers turn them on, when they turn them off, what disciplinary action would be taken against an officer if they don't follow the policies? What about public disclosure of the footage? So has a policy been developed yet for body-worn cameras?
So through you, Chair, to the councillor, the short answer is no. We have developed a framework policy. We have a number of examples from across the country that we are working with, and our policy is in development. One of the directions from the board was to get that policy developed before moving forward. So we are working on that currently, but the short answer, not developed yet, in development.
Okay, because I would, given how controversial they can be and how limited their efficacy has been demonstrated in other jurisdictions, it would be great before we go spending money on them to have that policy in place. So I appreciate that. With regard to the Wortley report, recommendation set 3, because you had mentioned some of the other ones, but recommendation set 3, particularly 3.2, page 174 of Scott Wortley's report, talks about data collection for police stops. Now, of course, street checks have been banned in Nova Scotia, but we still, obviously, your officers would stop people for a variety of reasons, particularly traffic stops. One of the things Dr. Scott Wortley talks about is the necessity of collecting data, particularly race data, when it comes to those. And I know there's a comprehensive report working on, but as you mentioned, you already are, in terms of hiring, in terms of training, implementing some of the Wortley recommendations. This one, to me, is probably, at least for me, the most important recommendation coming out of Dr. Wortley's report. Are you anywhere down the road? I was looking in the budget, hoping to see some money for IT, developing the capacity in a database, policies around data collection. So are you working on that particular recommendation at the moment?
Oh, yeah, this is, thank you for the question, and through you, Chair. This is a multi-agency response. It's currently under the direction of the Department of Justice. My personal view, and I'll just share it very quickly, I've shared it with the Chair, is if you are going to be stopped anywhere in Nova Scotia, you should receive the same treatment, the same collection of data. It should be captured the same way, recorded the same way, reported the same way, disposed of the same way, all those kind of things. So we are working in conjunction with the Department of Justice. There's a committee set up. It's currently under the co-chairship of Deputy Chief Don McLean and Kimberly Franklin from the Human Rights Commission. They are meeting on a regular basis, and they've recently taken on a researcher to help them do that. The fundamental question for me is defining what a police stop is. And once we've done that, is an interaction with someone on the street when you go up and talk to them or something like that. Very clearly, a vehicle stop where somebody gets asked for their driver's license ownership and insurance is very clearly a police stop. And if we are going to be collecting data, how do we do it? And to your point, what does the back end look like on that in regards to capturing of it, infrastructure, funding? So the work is being done. I would suggest that this is not going to be a quick turnaround. The committee that Deputy Chief McLean and Ms. Franklin co-chair has a number of people assigned to it. There's membership from the RCMP, there's community membership, obviously there's Department of Justice membership. So they are going down that road and they are continuing to do that. I would put something in the budget for that if I had something concrete to get a costing on. That potentially will be part of future budgets, depending on the work of the committee. And it is important work, and it has to be thoughtful work, and it has to engage the community, and they are trying to do that. So the answer to that one is yes, we are working on it. But what I would suggest is that there will be some patience required to get us to the end and appropriate product.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kinsella. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, good morning, sir. Thank you for the presentation. Truly appreciate it. So first of all, I want to state, Chief, to you and to the men and women that serve in the HRP, thank you for their service. I know there's still lots of work to be done within policing and HRM, and in fact in Canada. You alluded to in your presentation with anti-Black racism, our relationship with Indigenous people, LGBTQ people. We still have lots of work to do, but I do appreciate those that serve today, and I thank them for that. One of the presenters from the public that spoke up alluded to the Wharton report and not reporting the status, which is surprising to me, Chief, because before I left the police commission, one of my motions was having clearly an update on a regular basis to the police commission and to council on the status of the Wharton report. Also, making it easy for the public to be able to see the status by going to our websites and seeing that. Is that not taking place? Is that not occurring?
So thank you for the question, Councillor, and through you, Chair. The updated tracker that's on the Board of Police Commissioners website is updated by the Board of Police Commissioners. So that's my understanding of how that is going to be done. But what I can tell you is to the comments, and I think it's important to note, I've already mentioned it, so I won't belabor it. But there are a number of stakeholders in a number of the recommendations. So the recommendations that can be completed, we have been working towards that. But I'd like to go to an example just in section 4 of the recommendations. And, you know, if you go to 4.2, HRP and RCMP should continue to develop and implement mandatory anti-bias, cultural competency, and race relations training. So a couple of the things that we've done over the last little while is obviously Journey to Change. You've heard about that today. The other training program that we developed in-house is called Legitimate and Bias-Free Policing. And that really is a reminder to officers in their everyday interactions to act in a legitimate way, to explain and articulate why they're doing what they're doing, and to ensure that their interactions are bias-free or as bias-free as they possibly can be. So it's just a reminder on that. What I would suggest is, yeah, we've done 2 training courses in that. We've done historically training. We're working on continuing ones. But I think what we have to look at from a long-term perspective and to ensure, that we always are building trust with the community is that one would be ongoing and there would be a maintenance portion to that particular recommendation. And, that's going to be important, not only for the community, because we're always learning new things. We're always getting new officers. So that's just one example. And there are a number of recommendations that are like that, truly we can say we've completed a portion of it. But I think our commitment needs to be deeper than that. I think our commitment needs to have a maintenance portion to it. And I would say that, always in the future, we have to look at how we do better with the community and train our officers better. I hope that helps.
It does help, but I guess, I think what residents are wanting, Chief, is where are we today? What's been happening? And just your verbiage you just gave me is fine. Having some sort of update and maybe not relying upon the police commission to do that. Maybe that's how you've been directed, but I just think the citizens should be able to go very easily and say, where are we with the report? So thank you for that. The next item is, COVID-19, I want to hear, what's the impact COVID-19 has had on policing and public safety, in your opinion, since it's almost a year. I can't believe it's almost a year since this all started, and it's changed the world. But what has the impact been on policing and more importantly on public and community safety?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor. So, that's a real long answer. I'll try to keep it as trimmed up as I can. I think some of the impacts are self-evident. When we're going by public health requirements and conditions, and they ask us not to go anywhere unless we absolutely need to. And in the early parts of the pandemic, we first saw people that weren't going by the rules. So lots of people out and about, not abiding by public health direction. So we started with education. We moved on to enforcement, and we've gone leaps and bounds over the last little while, and we're pretty much just at enforcement now. We just noted over the weekend we issued 2 offenses to 2 different restaurants. A number of people have been charged over the last little while. So some people just aren't getting the message, but others are. But beyond that, it's the impact of the pandemic and the way it spreads, the way the virus spreads. Now, I would shout out kudos to our health department and the municipality and all of our partners, because I think we've done a pretty good job here. Other provinces are not faring so well. But in that regard, we know that when the second wave hit and we opened up some areas for more people to attend, we began to see an increase. Newfoundland is a perfect example of somebody experiencing, how quickly the virus can spread. So from a policing perspective, my job and the job of the senior management here at HRP is to ensure that we are providing frontline services through a pandemic, around a pandemic, whatever that looks like. And along with that, first and foremost, is the safety of our frontline officers and those that are engaging with the public on a regular basis. So our commitment is to that. And if that means having some backup officers prepared to go and fill in, that's what we'll do. And that's part of our commitment to the redeployment that we've done here in HRP during the pandemic. Now, all of us want to get out of the pandemic. I don't think there isn't anyone that wants to be pandemic free. Hopefully we'll get there. With the vaccine rolling in and how the vaccine is going to be put out, we're certainly moving in the right direction. The other piece of it is we've seen ebbs and flows in the crime rate. Sometimes things pick up and sometimes they level off. The lack of employment and the people that aren't working, that's hurting us as well. I could go on for some time. I'll leave it at that unless you have any more detailed questions.
I'll come back, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very,
I'll come back.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mancini. Councillor Othet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chief and others for the presentation. I always want to start, like I do every year, thanking the folks that I deal with so regularly with HRP in West 5 and West 6 here, the folks on patrol, the community response officers past and present, school officers past, QRU folks that have stepped up to do extra things for us, and of course the traffic unit, who I have no doubt I drive crazy with all the requests we get for enforcement, particularly after, well, I think during the lockdown and then afterwards, all the speeding requests and things that we came up with, and of course the divisional commanders. So thank you to all those. The Chief, so following on in that, with this, and I know you can't go into specific details and numbers and this sort of thing because we're not in camera, but I do, and I'm just wondering, if this budget is approved and goes forward, where are we with the getting back to full complement, if you will, of community response officers, full numbers and times of quick response officers, quick response unit officers, sorry, and if you're planning to bring back school officers. So just plant those three questions for a minute. So CRO, school officers, QRU. And the other thing I wanted a little bit of clarification on was there are sort of two reports or two studies in the air right now. One of them was initiated by council and former councillor Laura Lee Nicol on policing and services. And then you've got your two, your internal one on patrolling and whatnot. So I'm kind of wondering, how do these two dovetail or how are they different? I think we heard about the patrolling one last year. And I'm just wondering how this is coming along and how it's different than the request that Laura Lee brought forward. And because people like myself, and I'm not the only one, represent areas that are growing. And these areas are growing and the calls from those areas are growing because of the density and the population growth and the density. So I am concerned about the impact on those two requests. The other question I'll ask you before is following up on Councillor Cleary's point. I was quite willing to suggest that the Journey to Change and the body cam project coordinator be put into the parking lot, but he did raise a good question on the timing of the body cam person. If you could just address that, help me with that one again. I didn't really hear your response to Sean on this one. Are we not putting the cart before the horse? If you don't have the policies and the technology in place, how do you rule? Why do you think you need this person now, I guess, to put it quite bluntly? So those are my questions for you, the reports, the positions, and then the two things that you want put into the parking lot. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor, and through you, Chair. I'll start with the positional bodies. As you'll recall, as we went into phase 1 of the pandemic, everybody got pulled back and got put into patrol. In July, we went back to our traffic unit and put them back out on the street. So they went back. We also had a contingency of school resource and community response. So each division has a school response officer. I think you kind of alluded to the fact that you do not have one. So you certainly do. Albeit it's not as beefed up as you had in the past, but there is a school response officer in each of the divisions and a contingency of community response officers. So our goal is to get all of those positions back in place post-pandemic. There is a danger and a concern moving them back too quickly with the phase that we're in, and I've already gone through some of the issues with the pandemic with Councillor Mancini, so I won't go over that because I think it's understood to everyone. As far as the quick response unit goes, any activity or deployment or anything that's happening with an HRP is currently and always under review for capacity. What are they delivering on? And then comparing that to priorities that we have in the organization. So that work continues, and we do have a quick response unit that is running. Albeit for the same reasons as CRO and SRO, it is a reduced unit. And we hope that someday we will get back to deployments in all those areas, but we're not there yet. We will continue to monitor. What I would say, Councillor, is if there's something specific in those areas, I know you mentioned your divisional commander, Staff Sergeant Jeff Clark. I know that you're in touch with him, and Councillor Mancini has Superintendent Kelly. If there's something specific that you need, I would encourage you to reach out to them. If there's something beyond that that you're not getting, that you need to get, I would encourage you to reach out to me directly, and we can have that discussion on closing the gap. As far as the police services report and Lorelei Nichols, that particular report has a number of recommendations that we are currently working through. We've been set back a bit by the pandemic, but that is still certainly on the table, and we are working through those. Two major components from my perspective under that report is the priority response review and then the redeployment, if it should occur, based on how we redeploy and attend calls for service. We have a number of areas that we have to look at there. We are moving forward with it. We are consulting and have to consult with our partners in policing because we're all dispatching to the same areas here. So that work is continuing. It is not quick work. It has to take some time. Lots of thought has to go into it, but we are actively working on it. And your third question was around the body-worn video position. And, you know, we presented, in my view, a fairly robust presentation to the board on body-worn. The board asked us to go and get some more information. We went and got that. We provided additional information in regards to research. And what I would say is, you know, different people view body-worn cameras in different ways. Different researchers view them in different ways. Different people have opinions on whether they're good, bad, or otherwise. At the end of the day, this was a request brought forward by the Board of Police Commissioners last July. I believe it was when Commissioner Mancini was on the board. And we brought that information forward and brought it to the board. In our January meeting, the board very clearly said, we're looking for further information. We're looking for further input. We want to know that you've had a deep dive, Chief, into the community. Have you talked to all the community members? Have you had that opportunity? So what we're trying to do is through this position, because will be a lot of work, and what we would hope to do, whether virtually or maybe even in person, small groups, is to be able to get out into the community and hear firsthand. And, you know, I'll go back to the work that was done pre-apology. It's that firsthand interaction. And I agree with the commission. We need more information. And we are working on the policy, trying to get that into place so we have it. The whole purpose of that position is to bring back a more robust, detailed presentation to the board and ultimately to council for 22-23, so an informed decision can be made. And that's the position. So I hope that helps, Councillor, and I'll end it there unless you have another question.
Thank you, Councillor Oath. That if I can interrupt you, A, you're muted, B, you're out of time. Chief Kinsella, I appreciate that you made the presentation to the Board of Police Commissioners. It would be helpful if the whole council could see the same presentation. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair and colleagues for the discussion so far, and Chief also for the presentation. So there's a couple things that there's two questions that I just want if the Chief if possible can respond from the public that spoke today, but also, you know, some of the items that I want to speak about are for the commission, but I think because some of the conversation that we've had and discussion had today, it'd be worthwhile. So one, just from the public, from the public participation piece, can you speak on the polygraph tests? And I'm not, Chief, I'm not sure if you were here. I think you were when the public was presenting, but I was wondering if you could speak on that and some of the issues that were brought up around that. And the other question related to that was, because it was brought up during public participation, was the victim services. And I know that the commission asked you about this a couple times, wondering if we're back to pre-COVID levels within victim services. So I'm wondering if we are back to pre-COVID levels, and then if we are or are not, is there a goal to look at increasing the investment for that department? Those are the first two, and then if I have time, I'll go ask my other ones.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Chair. So I'll start with the polygraph. So a polygraph is a tool, and it's a tool that's used primarily investigatively. I won't go, I'm not an expert on it. I don't know all the details, but I do know that it is a tool that has value to our investigative ability. So I'll leave it at that. Subject to different opinions on it, or whether it's good or bad. There are a number of police services across the country that use polygraph investigatively, and so that's for polygraph. The other piece is for victim services and the staffing. So what I can tell you is that we have returned back to pre-COVID numbers in victim services. And last, maybe in the December meeting, I think the question came up and I said we were hiring for one vacant position that has been filled. With any positions, we have people that for one reason or another aren't there, certain types of leaves, but currently we are fully staffed. Councillor Kemp brought this up at one of the Board of Police Commissioner meetings in regards to traffic enforcement. And I think you're alluding to it, Chair, is, could we use more staff in victim services? The answer is yes. However, we also have to be reasonable in the amount of work that is there and being done. And currently, I can say I've spoken with staff as recently as this morning, that there is no great demand, or there's no feeling, at least, that there is something that we're missing in that regard. But certainly, we could always use more staffing in certain areas. But I would have to do a review to ensure that that's something that we would bring forward, but I'm happy to look at it.
Okay, great. Thank you. How much time do I have, Chair?
2 minutes.
Okay, great. So the other thing that was brought up was the committee for Wortley, and Councilor Mancini brought up the reporting. And last time we had a conversation, we were talking about the Wortley and the tracking sheet, which is now my responsibility because our previous chair was dealing with that. So there's a couple of gaps. One is the Department of Justice, and there needs to be, and I'm meeting with them soon to kind of figure out what's happening on their end. But we're coming on to 2 years, and when we spoke, it's I think this is a point where we need to do a 2-year where are we, and hopefully that where are we can look back and see some of the progress we have made. But if not, then we have to have a clear plan on how we're going to address those gaps. So I know that we'll be working on that as a commission to kind of do that 2-year, what have we done, where we're at, and where we're going, and look forward to doing that work. And again, we have to make sure that our partners at the DOJ are on board. So the question around the budget pieces around the overs. So the online training technician, can you talk a little bit more about what that position entails?
So the multimedia training technician, what we're looking for here is the flexibility to deliver training in different ways. And we believe the multimedia training technician will allow us to do that. And we've learned some of this from COVID. We can't get large groups together. We can't get people together all the time. But we also have the issue of the logistics of getting people together when we need them, whether calling them in on overtime, adjusting shifts, taking them away from their regular duties. We believe that with this particular position and development of flexible training on multiple platforms, we can provide training, virtually. We can provide training through videos. We can provide training off hours. So if somebody's on a night shift and it's not particularly busy, we can have them come in and do training. We can deliver it in, smaller modules put together to make a larger course. So, taking a course that might run over 3 days, 3 8-hour days, we can compartmentalize it down to 6 4-hour sessions or whatever the addition is. It just will allow us, with all of the training requirements and the needs, to give us a different option, different availability to present with the flexibility. You can never get away from in-person training. You're always going to need that. But there are a number of areas that we need to deliver training. One of them is in the area of policy. We've mentioned we're going through a fairly rigorous policy revamp. There's training pieces that have to come out with that, and it will allow us to track and make sure people understand, allow them to interact. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I have some more, so I'll come back next time. So thank you, Chief.
Wonderful, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chief Kinsella, and thanks to everybody who works in the police services, the sworn and the civilian officers. I also want to thank the folks who serve on the police commission, our councillors in particular. It's a lot of work, and appreciate the fact that they take that on. I had some questions about the Wortley report, which Councillor Cleary and Councillor Smith have really addressed. Chief, I'm just one of the areas where we see great variance it sees every year is when we look at the police budget. The chief's office versus operations, it varies quite a bit from year to year. So in 1920, it was 5.2 million. It went down to 4.3. It's back up to 5 million. If you go back a few more years, there's an even greater variance. Can you just speak to why that might be?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Mayor, and through your chair, I'm going to ask Mr. Horton to provide some of the details around that.
Thank you, Chief. I think one of the biggest factors in that is when we have a collective agreement, the HRPA collective agreement is expired and they're working on a new one. Certain years that retroactivity or will not happen because we haven't got a contract, but it will happen in the following year. So I think the jumps in compensation there are largely due to the catch up once an agreement is in place. You would have some retroactivity, and then you would have the annual increase for that year as well. But I'd have to go and look a lot deeper to get specifics for each year as to why those increases or those jumps ups and downs.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm looking back at past budget books from 2015, and at that point in time, under Chief's office, the budget was 19 million. So I'm assuming that there's been a movement of responsibility through the budget process. I'd be interested if we could just get if I could just get a bit of a brief on that at some point in time to understand the variance in the Chief's budget versus operations. Is that something somebody could do with a little bit of research and send me a note on that?
Absolutely. We'll look over the past 5 years to see what I'm just trying to think off the top of my head if there's been any adjustments in what's been included under those sections year to year, but I can certainly prepare something and provide that for sure.
I would certainly appreciate that. Chief, you've been with us 2 years. I'm not sure exactly how long, but I know whatever period of time, you haven't had your honeymoon yet. You stepped into the frying pan, and it's been a lot ever since. And I recognize that that load has been very heavy. My last question is, and I'll be careful on this, but the Auditor General's IT audit. Do you have? And I know that a lot of the Auditor General indicated it wasn't resource heavy to sort of address some of these issues. Do you have everything you need to make the improvements that I know you want to make?
So through your chair, Mayor, thanks for the question. We're currently in the the preparation stages. There will potentially be some monetary asks, but the vast majority of them, or a lot of them, so I don't get bogged down in verbiage, is doing policies and making sure that appropriate measures are in place. So this recently came to my attention, and now that it is with me, I can assure you we're going to address it. We have a team put together, a very competent team, and any financial or monetary resources that are required, I'll certainly bring forward.
I would appreciate that, and I know it's a priority for you. It's a priority for all of us. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lovelace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will just echo my colleagues and say thank you very much for this presentation. I think we would all benefit from having the full presentation of the police that the Police Commission had. Certainly, I'm thinking that might be online, Mr. Chair, that we could view. Might be an opportunity, I'm not sure. My questions specifically, Chief Kinsella, are around crime prevention. And in particular, the prevention of crimes against women and girls and children. In looking at the crime severity index, while I certainly can recognize that we've had a drop, I think that it's paramount for all of us to understand that drop in the crime severity index is not that we've had less crime, but it's that we've had less crime reported. We know that women and girls in particular, and boys, have a very difficult time reporting sexualized violent crimes. And we know that historically, as we've seen here in this report, certainly the increase to the numbers in 2018 because of a major historical sexual assault case definitely jumps up these numbers. And so what I'm wondering, and also I just want to point out, as a young teenager hanging out downtown, always had the keys in my hand, always had a way to, to run, always had a friend, that kind of thing. I think that if we looked at the safety of women and girls, and children in Halifax in particular, and I'm wondering if we have studies on this, are we doing a good job preventing crimes in HRM against women, children, and girls, and what proactive measures is HRP taking? And that's my first question. My second question, which is really quick, on top of that, I'm just wondering what measures have been done to ensure the protection of the information, and so that we are not re-victimizing, people who have been victims of child pornography, to protect their information from an IT perspective. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chief Kinsella.
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Chair. So I'll just talk a little bit about reporting, or the lack thereof. Certainly from our perspective here at HRP, it's very important. And, we're regularly encouraging people to report. We understand through the pandemic, there's other effects. So just wanted to acknowledge that, the importance of reporting, whether it be, sexual crimes or really any crime, hate-related or otherwise, we encourage people to report at all times. From the prevention standpoint, obviously, we take it very seriously. One of the things that we did, and it took a while to get to where we got to, was the Special Victims Unit that we implemented within our CID division. That came out of, a focused effort by a lot of people here at HRP, and involved the implementation of a staff sergeant over top of the Special Victims Unit, separating out workloads for other detective sergeant, which is a staff sergeant, to make sure that not only the proper supervision was there for the investigations that were required to be done in those areas, but also the appropriate resources and support for the investigators. All of our, not all of, but a number of our investigators, and we work towards getting people trained in trauma-informed responses. So we're very in tune with that. Try to make sure that members who are responding even at the frontline level are going to those types of calls, have that type of training. So we focus in on that. The other thing I would say is in regards to prevention, it really is a community effort. We work closely with our partners in policing, the RCMP. We work closely with the universities, mostly when school is in session and there's lots of young learners coming into the city. We do promotional campaigns around that type of thing to ensure that people are aware and cognizant of it, and do our very best to make sure that we have those communications and conversations to prevent as best we can. Just in regards to the prevention of data, we are fairly stringent, on how data is released, when data is released. We follow the guidelines of the Freedom of Information process, and have been asked on occasion to step outside of that, and we will not do it. We have people that are very cognizant of the law and the legislation in that area, and we make sure that we protect people's rights and privacies in all instances.
Thank you. I will just echo Councillor Outhitt's comment about getting police in the schools. I think it's really important to build that connection with police at a young age. Thank you. I'm over time.
Thank you very much. If you would like to come back, you're more than welcome to, but at this point, Councillor Cuddle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And good morning, Chief Kinsella. Thank you very much for the presentation. Just some things to note. I was really happy to hear diversity and inclusion be a priority and something that you talked about. I think that is so important to the credibility of our force and also its effectiveness. And I also want to note the 5,000 hours of volunteer time contributed by HRP officers and staff. And just to say thank you. That kind of engagement in the community goes a long way to building those positive community relationships and trust. So that's a really kind of neat stat to show. On the community relationships, I see under the strategic initiatives that we have safe communities and partnerships. And kind of beyond stating a commitment to working collaboratively with communities, there's not a lot of information about specific goals or more specifically the measurable outcomes that will be used to determine success. So I'm just looking for some more information, and you've talked a little bit, through different initiatives, how community is, being engaged, but, overall from the Safe Communities and Partnerships Initiative, what kind of collaborations are being planned? And I really have to ask, are we going far enough in advancing kind of a new model of community safety, which I really feel residents have been calling for? And I'm not sure it is clear to me, and maybe you can just talk about this briefly again, about what the issue is with restoring the community response officers. I think there's 4 right now covering Halifax. And when you mentioned yourself how important that firsthand interaction is with folks, in my experience, those community response officers have been integral to that firsthand interaction and building those relationships and contributing towards the kind of the trust and goodwill in our communities. And I think that's really important, a really important piece of our policing. I see that a survey is planned, but I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about what the spirit of that survey is, and how, not beyond the survey, you plan again on working with community partners. And sorry, I have a list of questions here running through with my 5 minutes of time. Just a couple of other specific questions. The number of speeding and stunting offenses. How does that number of offenses compare to last year, or perhaps the last 3 years? And my final question here is about overtime, and I'm wondering what percentage of the compensation is earmarked for overtime, and what efforts have been made to decrease overtime. You know, is this an area where there could potentially be savings that could be allocated toward other initiatives, particularly in support of safe communities and partnerships and advancing the goals of the Wortley report? That's the end of my list of questions.
Okay.
If you need some clarification on them, please ask.
Thanks, Councillor. I'll see what I can answer, and through you, Chair. So the first part, I guess, was the measurement of effectiveness, and you know, we have a number of areas that we look to do that. We do it through our community response officers, our community relations and crime prevention branch. We do it through our school resource officers. We do it through our youth program and our co-op program. So we're regularly getting feedback, you know, in those areas and their engagement, you know, trying to meet the needs on a priority basis of the community. The other, I think, measure of or part of it anyway, of success is the number of applicants that we have and continue to have that want to be police officers. So there is that feeling, I believe, in the community where people want to have an opportunity to join HRP and participate in that process and make a difference in their community. Measuring trust is a very big thing, and it's very hard to do that. You know, I've said it before, it takes a lifetime to build and only a second to lose. So, you know, we do that through community interaction, community engagement. One of the things around the survey that we would like to do is, you know, get the engagement from the community on what should we be asking, what types of questions. So the survey itself is part of Wortley, and it's part of the long-term surveying that's gone on to see how can we do better, be better, serve better with the community. So we did get waylaid a bit by COVID on the survey, but our intention is to move forward with that as soon as we can. And we're hoping that community engagement can be part of that going forward. You know, one of the things that may not be directly related, but I think it relates, is, and it goes towards building trust with the community, is that sense, how can the community come to us with their issues and present our issues? I mentioned earlier that we've moved our professional standards branch, the reporting and intake of complaints off-site. The reason that we did that is because feedback from the community was that they don't really like coming into the station, have to walk by uniformed police officers, have to wait in the lobby with a number of people while police officers go by. So we did that, and that started in January of this year. And the other part of our professional standards branch was a increase in the investigative ability of that branch to keep investigations in-house, to keep them confidential. And really what we're looking for is how can we do better through things that we hear from the community. So the professional standards branch, in my view, in the moving off-site is a measured measure of success for me. But I think that it allows people to give them a little more comfort. You know, it's more accessible and all those kind of things. So more to come on that, and certainly more to come on the survey. So I'm not sure if I've missed anything else, Councillor, but just in regards to the overtime budget. So on average, our overtime budget is about 2.5% to 3.5% over the past several years. So we're committed, obviously, and we're watching the overtime budget as closely as we can. Overtime has fallen off a little bit through the COVID pandemic, and we expect that to increase. Some of the examples around overtime is if we have a homicide in the community, you can't plan for those, and you can't not staff them. But other areas where, is there an alternative to a staffing requirement that is occurred on a particular shift? We're constantly looking at that all the way down to the watch commander level and even NCO level to try to make sure that we're deploying resources effectively as we can. So we have an eye to it. It's monitored very closely through all of our divisional commanders and the deputies, and there is a commitment to keeping that as low as we can, recognizing that sometimes overtime is required.
Okay. Thank you very much. If Councillor Cuddle, if you have more questions, I'd ask you to come back again. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you as well, Chief, for this presentation. We did at the Board of Commissioners have lengthy discussion around much of this, and I want to reiterate as well to my colleagues that we as well had some of the same questions and concerns around the body-worn cameras. I feel much more comfortable with the allocation in this budget now for the work that has to be done in relation to what we were able to contribute to the chief around our expectations around policy, and in particular around the engagement with the public. So I look forward to seeing that money become a useful and a good collection of information for us to consider at the board. Chief, it's not going to be a big surprise to you that I'm going to raise the issue of speeding and safety on our streets again. Every chance I get, I'm going to do that. I know that some of the other councillors as well, and I see Councillor Mancini giggling, and he can keep doing that because I'm just iterating what I think a lot of other of my councillor colleagues are saying, is that it really, 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 Chief, I can't say it enough, and I'm hoping any of the other staff that have any contribution to this is it's problematic. It is not it's not alarmist. It's absolutely real that our constituents are fearful now for their children, for their animals and pets, for themselves as they go out in their vehicles. And we have to find a way to address it. I've heard regularly, we have a traffic and transportation department that are going to work with us on traffic calming, and then there's a policing element to it. And we fought hard, I think, in our priority planning exercise with CAO, and to see that there was some acknowledgement that this really is a priority, and unfortunately it fell short of being listed in that priority list, which I still struggle with. That's part of the reason I want to be continue to champion for it. What I would like to know now is, can you share with us again the information, how our policing services, certainly from the HRP perspective, at this stage, and I'll probably have the same question for our Rcmp service, that how are you going to allocate this budget to addressing beefing up, I've heard you use that word before, beefing up the contribution that policing services will have to slowing our streets down and addressing the speeding in our communities. I would go so far as to ask you, is there a redistribution of an allocation of this budget to beef up the responses and the proactive work that can be done with our communities around education pieces, campaigns that would be a public campaigns around slowing our streets, slowing our drivers down? And I'd go so far as well to ask you if you could put some kind of percentage of what this budget might be towards that. I think it's important that our constituents can have comfort that we are acknowledging and validating that their concerns are real, and that we are prepared to step up. And I'd like to start with this budget and see exactly what do you intend to do, and if you need something more, then now's the time to spell that out to us. So I'll leave it with that, and thank you. Thanks for all the other questions, colleagues, as well. It's really awesome for us to all be able to hear these and know that a lot of the same things are on our minds. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor, and through you, Chair. So I'll start with the body-worn video, and you know, you mentioned it, Councillor, in your role as a commissioner on the board. I really appreciate it, and members of the organization appreciate the willingness of the board on the body-worn camera piece, and I understand, and it's important that we need to do everything we can to present the appropriate package. And you know, when the board said what can we do and how can we help in that area, that's where the idea came for the extra ask around the coordinator to try to get that information, most notably from the community, but in other ways, so we can present an accurate picture. So do appreciate that very much. And there's also a contingent, you know, in my opinion, around the body-worn video that can help leverage other things in the community, and you know, that's yet to be seen, but perhaps we'll be able to gather that information and bring it forward. You know, speeding and road safety issues are probably the largest complaint, or one of the largest complaints that we get on a regular basis. We have a very professional and committed traffic unit who are out pretty much every day, you know, attending to those very issues, whether it be stunting, and our stunting charges have increased considerably, or whether it be intersection safety or other, you know, potentially hotspot areas. So primarily how that deployment works, you know, is either a complaint from a citizen or a call from yourself into the divisional commander, and then we set up a program to try and go and mitigate, whether it be through enforcement or education or otherwise. We have a number of traffic calming mechanisms, and we work very closely, in my view, with TPW. We sit on the Road Safety Traffic Committee, and we work with Brad Anguish and his team to try to do what we can in the areas that are becoming known, or hotspots or collision areas or those kind of things. So that is in process all the time, and beyond the traffic unit. We have patrol officers who are out there, you know, enforcing traffic laws when they are not otherwise engaged with priority calls for service. And we also have the community response officers who will assist not only with traffic and speeding beyond, you know, their regular community engagement, but also for other calls of important nature in the community. So that particular piece is a real team effort, and we're committed to doing that. And our partners in policing also sit on the road traffic committee. So, you know, we'll continue to work in that area to do what we can and lend a hand where we can. The point of redistribution of resources within the budget. So this budget does include the financing for the traffic unit in its current state, and you know, other mechanisms. And you and I had this conversation at a previous board meeting. There is no additional ask for additional traffic resources per se to have more traffic enforcement officers. And you know, we're cognizant of the efficiency put into the budget, and great thought went into this budget. So we've already talked about that particular piece, and I'm happy to go and examine that if that is either the will of council or the board, and see what that might look like. The other piece of reallocation, I'm not sure if that's the word you use, but I believe it was the intent, reallocation of existing resources into more traffic units. You know, we're a very lean organization, and you know, I'll certainly have a look at that. But for us to do that would mean augmenting or moving something else under the current financial structure. So I'll just throw that out there as a piece, but we're happy to continually work to how we can, you know, use problem-oriented policing concepts to mitigate traffic, and you know, be in the area, do the enforcement, do the education. And you've also mentioned in the past, how can we communicate better as a not only, you know, as a police service, but as a partner with the Rcmp and as a board. And I think there is avenues that we can explore, and those discussions are going on internally here at HRP. So thank you for your questions, and I hope the answers help.
Thank you, Chief. I do appreciate. I'm glad you raised the issue of communications, because I think that is an area that we can improve and should improve. Mr. Chair, I'm not sure. I just want clarification on if there was an ask, or how would I have to move the Chief's investigation into examining if there is any further a way to cost out additional resources to the traffic division. If we do I do that here? Do I do it later at budget when it's in council? How could I proceed on that a little bit if I chose?
Councillor Kent, I would ask you to come back with that. You have planted a bug in the Chief's ear for now,
Yeah.
but we are at just about 10 minutes for your time. So I would ask Councillor Austin to go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chief, for the presentation. I have, I mean, generally, I'm okay with what's in front of us. You know, it's for the most part, it's a stand pat budget, is the impression I have of what's been presented to us. There's no new additional officers. Most of the budget increase, the vast majority of it is compensation, because of course salaries go up every year. So just holding the status quo in the police department is going to cost more money each year. And you know, I think where we are right now in terms of a moment in policing, I think I'm comfortable with that. Because that gives us time for the process at the Police Commission regarding defund, and the Councillor Mason's motion about civilianizing portions of HRP, that we can actually have a detailed look at that. So I think this is appropriate right now. I did have some specific questions. The polygraph piece, Chief, when you answered Councillor Smith, I didn't hear an answer as to whether HRP is still using polygraphs for employment. Could you clarify that, please?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor, and through you, Chair. Appreciate the comments. And as far as polygraph, yes, we use it as an employment screening tool to ensure, you know, security clearances for candidates for work.
Well, we might have a difference of opinion on that. I'm no expert on polygraphs. It's probably something for the Police Commission to dig into, since that starts to head more into the operational side. But I mean, my understanding is, I mean, they've been responsible for wrongful convictions, and they have some dubious merit. Second question, the disposition clerk that would be added to the budget. You referenced in the presentation that that work has been being done off of other people's desks for the last while, because we haven't had a dedicated resource for that. I tend to think it is important to actually have solid records. I mean, there's many police departments across North America that have got themselves into trouble when, you know, balancing that resource crunch, have sacrificed on the record side, and it's come back to bite later on. I mean, I think of our own evidence locker as an example, right? When we don't prioritize the actual management of the huge amount of stuff that comes at any department. Could you tell me what the folks who have been doing this job off the side of their desk, what the core duties are? Like, what are we robbing currently from right now to actually get this work done?
Okay, thanks, Councillor, and through you, Chair. So just in regard to the statement of robbing of duties, it's not the robbing of duties, but it's the you know, the work that isn't being done, I guess, and not having a particular person assigned to that position. The other members there have other priority work that they're doing, and that you know, there's a number of risks associated to that. I won't go into too much detail in the public section. Happy to go in camera on this particular topic. There are some, you know, concerns around vulnerability. I think that would be best discussed in camera. So I'll leave it at that, pending the direction of the chair.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just wrapping up, I know I'm probably at my 5 minutes. If I'd be prepared to look at, in terms of extras in the budget, the clerk piece, we should probably get an explanation on that in camera, maybe when our conversation runs its course here. The clerk piece, the body camera piece, and the extra training would be items I would be prepared to entertain for consideration in the parking lot. So I'll leave it at that and let the discussion carry on. We can go in camera maybe later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Stoddard. And we cannot hear you, Iona. You're muted.
The mute button. I'd like to thank you, Chief, for your presentation. I echo Councillor Cuddle's appreciation of the volunteers and how they give their time. I also agree with Councillor Kent that speeding is a huge concern in our community. My questions are, the department is now dealing with Workmen's Compensation Board. I'm just wondering what the cost is to be part of the Workmen's Compensation Board, because I understand there is a cost, and how much is there saving the department? Also, my other question, is there allotment towards mental health in connection with the officers' mental health and how officers deal with mental health issues with residents? You also mentioned officers deal with bias the best they can. I wanted to know if they received training on unconscious bias. I took the course for unconscious bias, and it adds to one's understanding of their thought process. And finally, I don't know if I'm over, Chair. I wanted to talk about the new gun control legislation. It's my understanding that if passed, HRMs and other cities will be able to pass bylaws to control handguns. Do you have any thoughts about that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor, and through you, Chair. I don't have the costs handy related to WCB, but Mr. Horton is looking those up, so perhaps he'll get them by the time I finish talking here. So my apologies for not having that readily available. Just in regards to the mental health piece, so certainly we take the mental health, dealing with that in the community and for our own officers in regards to care very seriously. And we have a number of training programs that relate directly to that, that the officers go through, and how to de-escalate, deal with people in mental health crisis, those kind of things. So that kind of training is ongoing and happens regularly. As far as wellness for our officers, we have a wellness coordinator assigned full-time within the HRP who helps us with that and regularly interacts with our officers, providing things that help them be well. We also have a EFAP program where we assist with, if officers need something, we're there for them. Providing support as required and professionally. And just in regard to the wellness, we have gymnasiums, we have, ability to exercise, all those things. We have a fairly robust program, like I say, that our wellness coordinator helps us with. We've had a number of training courses in and around bias and reactions. I think that to your reiteration of my point, I think we need to be cognizant of our biases all the time and pay attention to those and make sure that they're not influencing our decisions and behaviors. So we've had a number of formal programs. We've had professionals come in. We've had virtual training through the Canadian Police Knowledge Network. That are done online. They're not our training, but they're standardized training that is accessible to police across the country. We've also done in-house training, that helps with those kind of things and helps people understand that, whether it be the pieces of Journey to Change or the legitimate and bias-free policing training that we have. So, we can always do more in that area, and we are committed to it. And that was to some of my earlier comments around Wortley. And, the training recommendations from Wortley, in my view, will be around, I think, and they should be around for as long as, we're around doing the jobs that we do. And just in regards to the proposed handgun laws that might be coming down is, I think I want to be mindful that the proposed legislation has been specifically designed to receive input direct from the community. So I think it makes sense that, those discussions take place and we be respectful of those discussions, before we move forward. And from a police perspective, there are a variety of things that contribute to gun violence and the illegal supply. And, firearms and handguns are certainly part of that. I can tell you internally with our investigators at HRP, we're very cognizant of the incidences, and we're investigating each and every one of them. I will also tell you that from my perspective, one shooting in a community is one shooting too many. And we take all of that very seriously and are very committed to it. The other piece of this is engagement, with colleagues and peers across the country, whether it be at the municipal level or the chiefs of police level, through the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, the CACP, or the Nova Scotia Chiefs of Police Association, the NSCPA, and have those dialogues and those considerations and ensure that we have a robust discussion. It just came out yesterday, the proposal. We're in, I would say the early stages. We've got a ways to go, and I think lots of good discussion and dialogue will be coming on that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation thus far and for fellow colleagues and all the great questions. As I've come along, I've been striking off my questions because people have got them for me, which is great. I do have just on the operating, the summary of expenditure and revenue. I was just wondering 2.2 million on external services, what that might be, just at a high level, and then other goods and services at 1.9 million. I was a little bit curious about what those might entail. And then the other part would be to echo Becky Kent's, Councillor Kent's comments about speeding and safety on our streets and needing to see a very dedicated emphasis on how we make our communities safer.
Thanks, Councillor, and I'm not sure, I might have missed the last question around how we make communities safe, so you may have to give me that one again. Just in regards to the expenditures and the price points that you mentioned, they are around a number of things that we have to pay for. Most notably is our requirements and funding required for commissionaires. We use the Corps of Commissionaires and employ them to staff our buildings and do a number of tasks that are required around our buildings and within the service. There's also DNA costs and processing that we have to go off-site for certain things. And there's, costs associated to building rentals and those kind of things. So I can get Mr. Horton to give you further details on that, but in a general sense, that covers off the money piece. And I'm not sure if I missed a question or was a comment around community safety.
My comment was just to echo Councillor Kent's position around the speeding and safety on our streets and how we do a better job of that. Thank you.
And thank you, Councillor. And I'll just mention, you've just, because it's come up a couple times, and I did mention it in the number of hours that our volunteers commit to the organization. I can't speak highly enough for them. We can't do it without them. And, we really appreciate everything they do for us. So I just wanted to mention that and very clearly recognized by council as well. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you. Councillor Mancini for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, my question is around the body-worn camera project coordinator role. Could you once again explain to me for the next 12 months, what that person will be doing, their, you know, what is their primary role? Chief?
Yeah, I'm just getting on there, Councillor. Thank you. So, yeah, thanks for the question. It's an important one, and I did mention that this came out of, you know, the board said, how can we help? What do you need? And this is one of the things that we believe that we need, and we think that it can help. It primarily, but not related strictly to, we'll be doing community engagement. We believe that we need robust community engagement on this item. You know, we've heard differing opinions on whether they're good, bad, or otherwise. We've got academic positions, we've got positions from other police services. And one of the things that, you know, I've certainly learned, and I know this, and I'm sure it won't be lost on anyone sitting around the table here today, every community is different. Every community has different needs. And we want to make sure that if we are going to be bringing this forward, that we get the right dialogue with the community. So they'll be doing that. They'll also be working on privacy impact assessments. Those have to be done, and not every police service that moves to body-worn camera does a privacy impact assessment, but we believe it's important, and they will be tasked with that. They'll also be tasked with you know, further research, and to some of the comments around today, there's a pile of research out there, and you know, I'm going to say that I haven't seen it all. I've seen parts of it, and there's parts that are missing. So we can, you know, potentially get a broader base of the academia out there, the research that's out there, the testing that's gone on, juxtaposed at the Canadian and the American, you know, position, and perhaps as far as the UK. It's fairly new here in Canada. There are a number of services or a few services in Nova Scotia that have them. So, you know, the jury is still out, with still more information to get, so they will help us with that. And they'll certainly help us engage with the other jurisdictions, subject matter experts, and stakeholders. We want to be able to have the most robust presentation and information package for first the Board of Police Commissioners to review, and then certainly for you as council, so you can make an informed decision, and you know, then it certainly will be in your hands how we move forward.
Thank you, Chief. Look, my time is almost up. Mr. Chair, I'd like to put on the, you know, on the parking lot, we add the body-worn video project coordinator to the parking lot.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder for that?
Second, Tim.
Thank you, Tim. So discussion at this point will be on the body-worn video project, and we are going to start with a new list. Anybody who is currently on...
Sorry, Mr. Chair, point of order, if I put it on, can I now speak to it?
You will be able to speak to it, absolutely. I'm just reminding everybody else that any new names that come on the list will be speaking specifically to the body-worn video project. Please go ahead, Councillor Mancini. You have 5 more minutes.
Mr. Chair, I should not have challenged you. You know what you're doing. I apologize. So look, you know, one of the speakers this morning from the public spoke up. Both speakers not a big fan of the body-worn cameras. They shared their reasons and rationales for that. They said, you know, does it really improve accountability? Does it help with anti-Black racism? Look, this is a tool. It's simply this is one other tool in the toolkit. You know, Councillor Cleary brought up policy, and I agree with Councillor Cleary. We would never allow those body-worn cameras be in place unless there's policy in place. You know, when does an officer turn it on? When do they turn it off? What happens if it's not on when it should be on? What's the ramifications of that? Who owns the data? How is it stored? All that policy is important before we jump into making body-worn cameras active. You know, I look at what's happening around the world. We saw what happened almost a year ago with George Floyd and that murder that happened in the States by police officers. There's lots of cameras around for the incident, but there was body-worn camera footage that was shared later on that just confirmed from the start of the interaction with the police it was bad. It's a body-worn cameras help to confirm that. Here in HRM, all we have to take a look at is what's happening with Bedford. I understand now that there's an officer being charged, and that's going to court, I think, in a year's time. Body-worn camera, I'm sure footage would be helpful, the Walmart incidents and so on. So I support this. I hope colleagues will support this. I think it's worthwhile to add this person to the role. They'll be engaging with the community, as the chief said, and I look for the support. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate your time.
I think you're muted, Mr. Chair.
You're muted, Mr. Chair, and we enjoy saying that to you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kent, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just want to be reminded, if you could, Chief or Councillor Mancini, what would the cost be for this motion? What would the budget cost? In fact,
well, I can respond, Mr. Chair, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So it's in the presentation on the over budget, and it's 85,800. Oh, sorry, 85,000 for one 12-month term. I'd add that to the budget.
Okay.
It's not a year after year position. It's just to do all the work the chief mentioned, public engagement, and all associated with it, a full-time position. The chief.
Yeah. So just for clarification from the chief. So chief, this 85, I was under the impression that the allocation of funds for the preliminary or the public engagement element was going to be captured in that budget based on our conversation at the board. What is this additional 85 net benefit? What is it? I'm sorry, because I think I missed a few things on that presentation.
Through you, Chair, to the councillor. I apologize. I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. The ask for the over on this position is for the body-worn coordinator. There was a request from the board to say, you know, is there anything you need to help you get what we need vis-a-vis the more expanded and robust package? So that's why the position is being asked for.
Yeah.
And if there's a more clarity that you require, I'm happy to give it. Sorry, I just don't understand what you're asking.
No, I missed a portion in this recent presentation, sorry, and you can appreciate a lot of information is coming at us. I tried to keep everything all in the right queue, especially with numbers, that the 85 is the over ask and that we're not adding anything further on to that. All right, I'm just going to wait and see if there's any other councillors who are going to weigh in on this, and then we'll go to a vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lovelace.
Hello, Mr. Chair. I was just asking for the motion to be posted so that we can read it, and just to be clear of the wording. So Mr. Traves has noted that it's to add consideration of 85,000. Just want to be clear on the wording of the motion, please. You're muted, Mr. Chair.
Twice in just a few minutes. Oh my gosh. Mr. Traves, if you could speak to that, please. We see the motion in the chat, but I'd appreciate it if
the clerk has done a better job of capturing it based on the process. Essentially, to add this along with other items for consideration at the end of the budget process as a parking lot item. Once we see all of them, then there would be a discussion as to which ones council wishes to fund.
So this will go into just the parking lot, and we will discuss them all with the budget adjustment list when we come back closer to the end of the budget process. Councillor Kent, would you like to speak now or later on?
No, this will be after the motion. It's a comeback on my first option.
Okay. Are there any other speakers to the body-worn video project coordinator? Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't sure if I got my question in there in time on the chat line. Not to hold up the motion, but did I hear correctly that there was a presentation on body-worn camera to the Board of Police Commissioners? And if there was, is that something that would be shareable to the members of council?
I'm going to ask Councillor Smith to speak to that. About the presentation to the Board of Police Commissioners on the body-worn cameras, and then.
Yeah, I can speak. So yeah, there was a presentation. We actually had two presentations. We had an initial one And then the commission asked the chief to go back and provide some more information with some research and citing some other concerns that we had. And so we had 2 presentations. So maybe we can get that sent, ask the clerk's office if they can send that to council, if that is something that folks are interested in.
I would appreciate it.
Okay.
It would help you to make an informed decision. So that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah,
I would certainly, I would also appreciate that. So Ian, if you could work with the rest of the clerk's office and get that sent to council. Thank you.
We will work with the HRP and we'll get it sent out to everyone.
Thank you very much. Is there a chance that that could be done over lunch?
We will work on it and try to get it sent out as quickly as possible.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Daigle-Gammon, do you have anything further on this?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my other questions will be remaining for the in-camera session.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thanks, Chair. And really quickly, because this is just a parking lot item, so we'll be able to discuss a little bit more. So, you know, I've been pretty clear my feelings towards body cameras, and I still don't know if it's something that I would support. But my biggest question here in general is around disposition, understanding that there will be robust community consultation, but as Councillor Austin mentioned, in other councillors, there's 2 processes already ongoing, many other ones, but 2 related to HRP. You know, one is the motion that came from council around reviewing our policing services and delivery, and then there's also the defunding the police consultations that are going to be happening, coinciding as well, which is something that I've been talking to folks about and trying to figure out how to have those 2 discussions at the same time or separately. But so this person that would be hired from what the chief has said in terms of resources they need would be in charge or supporting public consultations. I'm just wondering, you know, obviously the policy, the assessments, this person would doing that work, but when it comes to the public aspect, how would this position support that, understanding that there's some other things on the go as well?
Chief Kinsella.
Thanks, Councillor, and through you, Chair. So this would be a dedicated resource that would go and do those public consultations, that would, you know, assist with gathering the information around the privacy assessment, would assist to ensure that we can do the policy, to bring that information back and get the research information, more broader research. We currently don't have the capacity to assign someone specifically to that task. And, you know, so that's where we are with this particular position. It will be increased dialogue. You know, it's to assign it any other way, perhaps we won't be able to bring the information back that I believe the Board of Police Commissioners is looking for, and perhaps council. That's what we're trying to accomplish through this position. It will be a dedicated resource to go out and help us with that work, and you know, anything else that might come out of that consultation with the community. So I'm not sure if that helps or hinders, but you know, we've done the work we can inside. There's you know, obviously considerable extended information that the board is looking for, council may be looking for. We're prepared to do that work, but we're going to need some assistance to be able to do it.
Right. So really quickly, and I'll end it here. My biggest concern is with these 2 other processes that are already ongoing, and then now hiring a person to also be in charge of community engagement. And you know, not everyone who is in positions that are able to work with the public. So, you know, finding somebody who is an expert and able to coordinate this type of project and expect them to be able to speak to the public when, you know, on a subject like policing, I feel, you know, probably be a needle in a haystack being able to find a candidate that can do all of that, plus present us with policies and whatnot. So I am concerned on how we are going to get this person to engage with the public alongside these other discussions. So I'll leave it at that, and you know, I see this properly passing, and we'll have a deeper discussion when we get to the parking lot. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I see no further speakers on the motion related to the body-worn video project coordinator. The motion that is currently on the floor. Councillor Mancini, would you mind reading that motion into the record, please? The clerk has posted that in the chat.
Yep, will do, Mr. Chair. That the Budget Committee include $85,000 in additional funding for costs associated with the body-worn video project coordinator, which is a 12-month term, within the proposed 2021-22 budget for the Halifax Regional Policing in the parking lot as an operating over budgeting option for consideration. So moved.
Thank you very much. I believe that has already been seconded. Since there are no further speakers to it, I would like to ask the clerk to go through the roll on this one, please.
Beginning with Deputy Mayor Oatit.
Yes.
District 1, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Voting in favor of the motion.
2, Councillor Hensby.
Affirmative.
3, Councillor Kent.
In favor.
4, Councillor Purdy.
Voting in favor.
5, Councillor Austin.
In favor.
6, Councillor Mancini.
In favor of the motion.
7, Councillor Mason. District 8, Councillor Smith.
4, further discussion.
9, Councillor Cleary.
Yes.
10, Councillor Morse.
In favor.
11, Councillor Cuddle.
In favor?
12, Councillor Stoddard.
In favor of the motion with further discussion.
District 13, Councillor Lovelace.
Voting yes.
District 14, Councillor Blackburn has sent her regrets for the meeting today. District 15, Councillor Russell.
In favor.
And Mayor Savage.
I don't see Mayor Savage in the meeting, so that motion passes. We have moved the body-worn video project coordinator to the parking lot. It is 5 to 12. We can either continue if anybody else would like to discuss any of the other options over budget, or we can break for lunch at this point and resume at 1 p.m. My recommendation for coming back at 1 p.m. is we come back to an in-camera session. So we have now all received that in our as an invite in our calendar. How would you like to proceed?
So, Chair Russell, if I could
Yes,
make a suggestion, if we are going to be moving to in-camera directly at 1, it may be prudent to have the motion to move in camera before the lunch break, so we can move directly to the in-camera meeting if that is agreeable.
I would move that, Mr. Chair, if you wish.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, Councillor Austin. Do we have a seconder, or Councillor Smith? You look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I have to navigate 2 screens to write in the chat because my computer have its mind of its own right now. So my question was going to be, if we do the in-camera, are we still going to come back and have discussions around the budget, or are we going to end it there and move on to the RCMP? Only because I wanted to put the Journey to Change training into the parking lot so we can discuss that more at the further meeting.
The purpose of the in-camera session is to be able to get more detail on these options over budget or any of the other budget items related to the HRP budget. Okay. So we would come back with the in-camera discussion, then come back into public session and have any of the further discussions about this, and close off the HRP portion, and then move on to the RCMP portion.
Works for me.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Outfit, I believe you seconded the motion to return at 1 p.m. in camera.
No, I'm sorry, Chair. I thought Councillor Smith was going to put on the motion about adding Journey to Change in the parking lot. I was going to second that, but I guess you'll have to come back, or if you allow it, I'm happy to second it.
Councillor Austin has made the motion to return in camera. I'm not sure how to address this one.
Councillor Cleary would second Councillor Austin's motion.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Cleary.
Motion on the floor, so I'll support Lindell later then. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. It is 5 to 12. Let's break for lunch. We have the motion to come back in camera. Go ahead, Ian.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. That motion is on the floor to go in camera. Did you want to vote on that before the break to lunch so we can go right into the in-camera meeting?
We can, yes. So I don't believe we need a by roll vote on this. So all in favor of returning at 1 p.m. in camera signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great. Thank you very much. We are breaking for lunch, and when we come back, we will be in camera at 1 p.m. Thank you very much.
So to confirm for anyone who is online still, there should be a calendar appointment in your inbox for a 1 o'clock in-camera session. You'll be returning directly to that session at 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.